There we are. Right. Watercolor. Gosh, it's a big subject, and those of you who've been with me for a couple of terms at least will know that we've been working through the various stages of watercolor. And so what I intend to do is give you a crash course for about 5 minutes for people who haven't been with me for that long. Number one, if you're painting in watercolor, which can be quite challenging, you need to start by using the best materials you can possibly afford. You can get away with student color in oil paints and even pastels, but in watercolor, you actually get a different result with student color, because to make the pigment go further, they put in less big pigment and put in filler. Therefore, all your student watercolors will be slightly clouded and not the beautiful transparency you get from a real artist watercolor. So if you are buying new paints, please, please, please buy artist quality watercolor. The same is true for the brush. A watercolor brush will last you a long time, and it's worth buying as expensive as you can. The best quality watercolor brush is Kolinsky Sable. Since the war in the Ukraine, the price of a brush has gone through the roof. And that is about £600 now. So don't go there, you know, really don't go there. If you have Kolinsky Sable, please look after it, because it's worth it. But there are quite good quality, less Sable brushes which aren't Kolinsky. And there's also Sable synthetic mix. And there are some synthetic brushes now which ape watercolor brushes much better than they used to. The thing about using Sable or any hair brush is that it's got little hooks on it that keep the moisture in the brush until you press and get the pressure. What used to happen to synthetic brushes was as soon as you put your brush down, it dropped off the end. So you had less control of where the water was going, where the paint was going. So a Sable synthetic mix, or one of the new synthetics which are specifically designed for watercolor, if you can possibly manage it. So we've talked about the paints, we've talked about the brushes. The next thing to consider is the paper. I told you it was complicated. There are lots of different kinds of paper you can get. Again, the heavier weight you buy, and this is 300, the better. If you buy a lightweight paper, the minute you put water on it, it'll cockle, which is, they usually dry flat, but they can dry with a bit of a cockle in them. And while they're cockled, the paint runs into the dip, and then you don't get the result that you wanted. So if you're at all sloppy about your paints, and I tend to be, use as heavy a weight of paper as you can. Not only is the weight of the paper important, this is a lot to take in, so I hope I'm helping. There are also different surfaces. And different ways of making the paper. A good quality Bockingford, B-O-C-K, Bockingford paper, either ordinary or rough, is a good surface to work on if you are starting out and you don't know what you're doing. It's made of wood pulp, so it's not as absorbent as the rag-based papers or the cotton-based papers. That's a Bockingford. The next one, we looked at papers last term, actually. The next one we looked at, I think, was Arches, or Arches, depending on if you want to be French or not. Now that's what this is. This is Arches. It's got a rough surface on it, and the way it's made, the bumps and hollows on the paper are natural. Whereas if Bockingford, they tend to be regular because they're made on a machine and it just comes out the way it comes out, right? And there are other beautiful papers you can use. There's Two Rivers we looked at, one of the ones we looked at. And then you also get paper called hot pressed. Now, hot pressed paper is very, very smooth, and it's ideal for pen and ink drawings or botanical painting, where you are being absolutely precise and there's barely any paint on the brush while you're working to achieve what you want to achieve. That degree of accuracy, this hot press paper is good. All the other papers are called not, N-O-T, in capital letters. And all that means is they're not hot pressed. That's all that means. It means they're cold pressed, in effect. So cold pressed paper is the best for watercolor. If you like, I find art the best suited to my style of painting. You need to work out your own salvation. You might find one better than the other, depending on what it is you're doing. Oh, another one I talked about was Khadi paper, which is cotton-based paper, comes from India, and it's handmade by a local family. You know, it's very, whatever. I mean, that's beautiful to paint on if you get the right side. So that's the other thing. You've got, if you look at it, one side has got a slight grid look to it, which is where the cloth has supported the paper when we're drying it. And the other side's less so. Anyway, right, so that's that. Okay, so that's the last three terms work in about 5 minutes. So I hope that's helped. If you want to ask me any questions, please do. If you would like to look at some back issues of the YouTubes that we have for the various lessons, then you need to let me know. It takes a bit of organizing, so be absolutely sure that you want to do it and you're not asking for the sake of asking. Right, now, if you want to pick up paint from watercolor, the first thing I do, if I have this, is to just drop a bit of water on the paints I think I'm going to be using. So I've got a bit on my ultramarine, a bit on my cadmium red, my cadmium yellow, a bit on viridian, because I think I'll be using that, a bit of yellow ochre, and sienna. So I've just wet those, just dropped a bit of water on, because you'll have a job getting enough color if your paint isn't malleable. If it's fresh out of the tube, then, oh boy, you don't have any fight with you. Right, so you pick up the paint with your brush, and I'm picking up the paint by twisting the brush in the pan, so that I get the brush actually within the brush there. Then you need to work it, because what you are doing is mixing the gum arabic that holds the paint in the pan and the pigment together, and you're breaking down the gum arabic, so you have to work it a bit to get the paint to the right consistency so it will work. So I don't always remember, because I came to watercolor from oil paints, and life is different with oils. Okay, so you need to work it if you want to collect a bit of color. Now I've got this pan at a tilt. If I tilt it a bit more, it's not running very well, but now we're just making it more running. Right, now you can see it's running downhill. Okay, the color that I actually get on here is the part at the top of the hill. That at the bottom is a pool which has concentrated pigment in it, and the color I'm going to get on the paper is where the water and paint is in the right same suspension. So that is the color that I'm going to get on here. Right, okay. Next story. Right, paints are transparent and opaque. And just to cloud the issue, some are semi-transparent and semi-opaque, which is not the same thing, believe it or not. Okay, semi-opaque are nearer to opaque, semi-transparent are nearer to transparent. Transparent paints show their color by reflecting the white paper through the pigment. The pigment particles themselves are colored. The light refracts through the, if that's the right word, through the pigment, and it gives you the color. So transparent watercolors, if you use them correctly, should be radiant with light. Opaque colors actually cover the surface, blank out the white, and get their brightness from the pigment in the thing, because it's a much heavier, thicker pigment, and it doesn't allow the light through. What it does is give you a very bright color if that's what you want. Okay, so if you're looking for something to be bright, you use opaques. If you're wanting something to be radiant, then you use the transparents. And the same is true in between. If you mix transparents together, or if you overlay them or introduce them to each other, they blend and mix nicely together. What we're here to learn today, finally, is what you do with what you can do with opaques if you want to do something in particular. Let's suppose if I do this here, right? So let's suppose that's a blue dress. 3 pots of water, dirty water, and then you clean the brush from the dirty water in the next one, and you can see that's gone slightly blue, and then you pick up the clean water, having taken off those 2 waters first. Okay, so you know precisely how much water you're taking off. Life. Okay, so I'm going to pick up some of my now this is cadmium red. Cadmium red is opaque. And what I'm going to do, my friend, is to just put a line down there. Okay. Now, what the cadmium red is doing is pushing the blue away. So it's not lying on top of the blue, pushing it out of the way so that it can shine by itself. It was too wet, so it spread a bit. But if come on, you. If I'm trying to be obedient, I don't always remember. If you use a transparent color, it's a transparent red. And that one is transparent red. I just know. It's written if you're buying paints and tubes, it's written on the tube, right? Right now, this is a transparent red. If I go in there with that, you just watch what it does. It's bleeding out. And the more I leave it, the more it'll bleed out and out and out and out till the whole of that turns a shade of purple, right? You can see it's spreading now. It's spread further than that has already. Okay. Now what that does is allow you to paint something quite complicated, like Rachel's blouse there, all over them. Get the blouse in, and then just drop the color in afterwards, instead of trying to put the color in and paint around the bits and get the tone and the color, and then, you know, it just makes life a little bit easier, right? Okay, so let's see how we get on with. I am determined one of these days I will not end up with 3 dirty pots. I usually do by the end of the. Yeah. Could open a book. You can try. Right. This is Viridian. This is the color I'll be using for Rachel's blouse. I hope so. Right, so we got the Viridian here. If I the reason I've got the cloth there is I dry the brush on it. Don't for heaven's sake, hit the brush and dry it, wring it out. Please. It's too expensive for that. Right, now, if I put some of my, can you see? It's much less bright and it's spreading and spreading and spreading. So I'll do it over here. It's not giving me any color. It's turning purple because it's mixing with the green underneath. Interesting fact, alizarin crimson and viridian give a beautiful purple. But yeah, there we are. Right. So if I take that out, take my yes, you can just go look at that. Now, if I go, I just put dots in. They're not going anywhere. Not going anywhere. Staying bright. Yeah. And if the yellow, which is the other color I want, isn't it? You can see now why you need two pots, because that's really mucky, isn't it? Come on, Daddy-o. This is a cadmium yellow, I think. The cadmiums are all opaque. Any color that's called cadmium is a heavy metal, so it's opaque. See if we can drop some yellow in. Still showing a bit of the get it thick enough, it should be. But they're not going anywhere, they're not disappearing, they're staying where they should. So that's what you can do. One of the things you can do with a paper, not the only thing. But that's what we're looking at this week. Okay.
If you let the paint dry first layer,
yeah,
then how does the transparency and opaque?
Well, if you let the paint dry, that's fine. You can put your opaque up top and it's fine. It's great. And that's another way of using it. If you let your transparent paint dry and then you put a transparent color on top, the bottom one will shine through the top one. So you will get a color mix, which is beautiful. Sometimes you want it. Right. So I have, here's one I did yesterday. This is a Blue Peter moment. Okay. Right. So there is my, oh, can you see, Rachel? Right. So I've done a drawing of Rachel. And for those of you who are just beginning with drawing, I couldn't have done that 6 years ago. And replaced it. Right. By doing quarter of an hour sketching once a week, every week, with a class, that my drawing skills have begun. So there's no sin about tracing it, you know, it's just, it frees you up if you can paint. If you, with your painting, if you can do it. And it took me a long time. Right, okay, so I'm going to start with the blouse because that's what we're talking about. My microphone. How's that? Is that better? Sorry, okay. Right, so I'm just going to do the blouse, and then you can go and do your own thing. Create your own sins. Right, okay, so what I will do is to paint the whole of the blouse. Can't see. I'm having terrible trouble finding the right distance for painting. I don't know if that, oh, that's better. Good Lord, I can see. Right, okay, so we've got that. It comes down here. for a hand. Notice I'm using the flat of the brush, not the point, please. Right. And we come down here. And it's round here. And then the side to fill in the area. So I'm not drawing around the edge and filling it in. I'm using the brush to create the form. Right. What's that bit there? That's there's a bit more blouse here. Quite a big bit of blouse there. It goes around here and hangs out there. Just like that. Okay. Now, that is just the base color. I need to make it a bit darker in places because some of those places are in shadow. Right. So we're going to put the shadows in. Form before decoration. So get your form right. This is much darker here. I can see what's going to happen. This is going to dry out before I get a chance to do what I want to do. Right. And it comes down here a bit too. And around here. And all this is dark. But it's underneath. And this is dark. It's dark here. There's something going on there. I think that's about it. I'll just come down here a bit. Right. So now I'm going to put in some of the decoration. Just in places where it is. Doesn't actually matter where I put it, you know, in actuality, but if you want to be reasonably accurate, it helps. And then we put the yellow in, which is less successful because I haven't got the really thick paint. So, where are they? If it does that, you've got to start again. Don't try and go on with that because what I did there, the yellow was not sufficient. It was just mixed with the paint underneath. There we are. I think that will do for that. So it gives you the impression of the dress. Oh, there I see. Done it. Yes, my favorite occupation, getting 3 mucky pots. This one, no, it's all right, Pat. I'm not going to do any more. I'm not going to go on to the rest of it because this is, I want you to be doing the painting. This is the exercise. Well, I'm not going to do it while you're watching. Might do it afterwards. Now, if I find when that's dry that I want to darken some bits, I can do that. I can even lift it if I want to. If it's dried, and I've got a clean rag. Well, that bit's clean. So if I wanted to lift, I wet that. Just wet that. Take it out. I can take it out and make it paint. See? So you can't, if it's opaque, you can do that because it hasn't gone into the paper. Because besides having transparent and opaque, you've also got staining and non-staining colors. All the opaques are non-staining. Some of the transparents are staining, and some are not. Right? All this information is on the tube if you buy a tube. Or you can look it up on the internet. The makers of the paints have got charts where they give you all this information. And if you've been with me since the year, I did do a resume of paint, didn't I? Yes, but I think you have to have been with me about 10 years for that to figure, you know. But the makers of the paints will tell you all this kind of information if you want. If you look at your tube and it's got, I think it's a little white square, then it's transparent. If it's a white square with a diagonal in it, which is black, it's semi. And if it's all black, it's opaque. But the staining, and I can't remember how to do the staining and unstain, but there we are. That's it. So I hope I haven't given you too much information. If I have, you know, just tell me and I'll see if I can sort things out for you. But that's what I want you to do. I want you to take whatever you decided to draw, if you brought your own painting. And some people said they wanted one of mine, so they're here. Those people who said they wanted one. Do your drawing. Have a go first. And see how you get on producing this effect. It's really a matter of waiting for the paint underneath to dry enough to have a bit of resistance and not so much that it doesn't move at all. Yeah. So that's for this push effect. Okay, so go and enjoy yourselves.